There's a kind of silence that only settles over a house after a funeral. A silence so complete it feels intentional, like the walls themselves are holding their breath. Not even the night can compete with that sort of stillness. It feels ancient, heavy, unforgiving. My name is Ethan Moore. I'm 18 years old, and 3 days ago, we buried my father, Thomas Moore. The sun over Ashfield, Oregon, was merciless that afternoon, bright, unblinking, almost cruel. No wind stirred, no shadow softened the heat. The world kept moving, indifferent to the hole torn through my life. I remember gripping the flowers so tightly my knuckles whitened, but my mind drifted far from the cemetery. All I heard was the wind across the field, and the hollow, echoing thud of dirt hitting the casket. That's when I noticed her. Standing a few steps behind the others, dressed in black, her face hidden beneath a thin, almost ghostly veil. Clara Bennett. I hadn't seen her in over 5 years, not since before my father's health began its steep decline. In my childhood, she had always been kind, but distant, as if she were afraid to step too firmly into any role. Not a stepmother, not exactly family, just a gentle presence that drifted in and out of our lives like shifting weather. When the funeral ended, people left in quiet clusters. Neighbors with pitying eyes, my aunt clinging to tissues, old friends patting my shoulder as if the gesture could do anything at all. But Clara remained. She stood still until the last car rolled away, as though the house, or something inside it, had called her back. "Ethan," she finally said. My name sounded different in her voice. Lower, weighted, almost fragile. "Thank you for coming," I managed, though I didn't know why I felt the need to thank her. She offered a small nod, her gaze fixed somewhere near the floor. Out of habit, or maybe desperation, I invited her inside. The moment we stepped through the door, I felt it. The old smell of wood, dust, and time. All of it painfully familiar. But underneath it lay something new, an emptiness so deep it felt physical. My father's portrait still hung above the dining table, but even that seemed changed, as if he too had taken a step away from us. Clara lifted her veil, and in that shifting afternoon light, I barely recognized her. She was still beautiful, yes. But now, there was a solemn strength behind her eyes, a calmness mixed with exhaustion, as if life had carved new layers into her. "I wasn't sure you'd come," I said quietly. "Neither was I," she admitted. Something in her tone told me she wasn't here only for him. She was here for something she'd never said, something she'd carried alone. A long, aching silence settled between us. The hallway clock ticked 6 times, each one like a slow, tired heartbeat. "Your father loved you more than you think," she whispered. I looked away. Sometimes, it didn't feel like it. "Sometimes when someone loves too deeply," she said, "they forget how to show it in the ways we wish they would." Her words struck deeper than I expected. My chest tightened. For the first time since the funeral, tears rose, not from shock, but from recognition. She stepped closer, resting a gentle hand on my shoulder. It was a small gesture, yet it unraveled everything I'd been holding inside. I shut my eyes. Just for a moment, the world stopped spinning. When I opened them again, the house had shifted into gold, the kind of light that makes everything look like a memory. Clara seemed almost unreal, a figure caught between past and present, between what she had been and what she wished she could have been. "Stay a little longer," I said softly. "I don't want to be alone here." She nodded, and in that quiet, between the fading sun and the rising shadows, I felt something I hadn't felt in days. A presence, a warmth, a reminder that grief does not always walk beside us in silence. Sometimes it brings someone back with it. I felt the house breathe again. Night settled over Ashfield with a heaviness that pressed against the windows, thick and unmoving. Beyond the Maplewood district, lights flickered behind curtain-lined homes, but inside this house, time didn't move. It hovered, caught between past and present, grief and memory. Clara stood before my father's portrait, a glass of wine cupped gently in her hands, though she hadn't taken a single sip. Her eyes didn't hold sadness. They held recognition, an understanding carved from old stories and unfinished chapters. "He never liked having his photo taken," she murmured. "I remember," I said quietly, "but he commissioned this one. For you." Her breath hitched, so small it was almost lost in the thick silence. "When I first met him," she continued, "I thought he was untouchable, a man who had already lived every story life could offer." She paused. The air tightened around us. "But I learned that people like your father, they carry storms inside them, storms you don't always see." I studied her, the way she moved, the way she stood. Every gesture felt like a memory replaying itself, as if the house recognized her too. "Why did you two separate?" I asked, though part of me feared the answer. Clara's smile held no bitterness, just a gentle ache. "Sometimes loving someone also means knowing when to leave." Shadows drifted across the window, stretching along the floor like quiet ghosts. She watched them for a long moment before speaking again. "Your father and I saw each other clearly, just too late. But even when we weren't together, we never stopped speaking." "Not really. Some people remain part of your story long after the pages stop turning." She walked to the old piano my mother had left behind, a relic of a life that felt impossibly far away, and let her fingers hover above the keys. "Memory is a way of returning," she whispered, "even if no one is waiting for you." Something shifted inside me. I shouldn't have felt comfort in her presence. She belonged to a different chapter of my father's life, one I barely understood. But that night, in this grief-stricken house, she was the only living pulse. She stayed long after everyone else had gone, drifting through the rooms like she was retracing steps she once knew by heart. The floor creaked gently beneath her, each sound echoing in my chest. More than once, she paused outside my door, listening, or remembering, or maybe working up the courage to say something she still held inside. Later, I heard the piano, a delicate, hesitant melody, almost a whisper, almost a question. Drawn by the sound, I found Clara seated at the instrument, her eyes closed, her fingers suspended above the keys like she was holding a memory in her hands. "I couldn't sleep," she said softly when she sensed me. Neither could I. The music filled the empty house, not loud, not mournful. It was the kind of sound that lives somewhere between longing and confession, as if my father were in the room with us, guiding the notes, guiding her. "Your father always said this house had a soul," Clara murmured. "I never believed him. I thought it was just one of his romantic notions." Her gaze lifted to the portrait hanging above the dining table. The softness in her eyes wasn't new love. It was old love, worn and fragile, but still alive. "Places carry love," she said. "Even after the people are gone, they don't vanish. They change. They stay in the walls, in the echoes, in the quiet." Her words settled over me like dust caught in a beam of fading light. She wasn't only saying goodbye to him, she was saying goodbye to the version of herself she had once been with him. Outside, rain began to fall. The scent of wet earth seeped through the open window, mingling with the ghost-sweet fragrance of blooming isolus. Clara tilted her face toward the night, letting a few droplets touch her skin, and for the first time that entire evening, she smiled. "Do you know the saddest part of grief?" she asked softly. "What?" I whispered. "That we don't miss the people we lost?" She turned toward me, eyes glistening with an emotion I couldn't yet name. "We miss who we were when they were still here. Not the person as they were, but the version of ourselves that existed when they were still here." I couldn't respond. Her voice carried a quiet truth I wasn't prepared to face. It settled in my chest like a weight I'd been avoiding since the funeral. By the time the storm finally softened to a distant murmur, we had drifted into the library, the one room untouched by chaos, where the air smelled of varnish, old paper, and years that refused to fade. Without speaking, we began dusting the shelves, replacing books in neat rows. The mundane rhythm steadied us. There was something healing in touching the things my father once held. Then I saw it. A folded letter tucked behind a stack of poetry books, careful and intentional. My father's handwriting, sharp, deliberate, familiar enough to unravel me in an instant. It read, "Clara, if silence ever speaks to you again, do not fear it. Listen, and tell it that I tried once more." I handed it to her. Her breath faltered, tears gathered, yet she didn't let a single one fall. "He never gave me this," she whispered. "But he must have known I would come back. He must have known I'd need it." She touched the letter like it was fragile skin, like she was afraid it might dissolve beneath her fingertips. "Your father believes souls never leave completely," she said quietly. "He said they linger in the people who carry their memories." I wanted to speak, but my throat felt tight, locked. And suddenly, the house felt changed. Lighter, yes, but alert, as though every wall leaned toward us, listening. When evening pulled itself across the windows, I offered her the spare bedroom. "You shouldn't drive at this hour." She nodded once. "Then I'll stay, in the room at the back." I felt relief, unexpected, grounding settle into me. Yet sleep still refused me. From my room, I heard Clara moving through the hallway, slow and deliberate, like someone remembering the map of a place they once knew by heart. She paused at doorways. The floorboards sighed beneath her feet. It felt almost ceremonial, as if the house required her footsteps to complete some unfinished ritual. Then came the piano. Just one soft line of melody, but enough to pull me from my bed. The sound was fragile, delicate, almost afraid to exist. I followed it to the living room and found her seated at the piano, eyes closed, the faintest tremor in her hands. "I'm sorry," she whispered. I couldn't sleep. "It's okay," I said. "Neither can I." We didn't speak again, we only listened. The music wasn't really a song. It was an exhale, a memory shaping itself. A conversation between past and present. A message between her and the man we'd both lost, as if my father were guiding her hands from somewhere just beyond reach. "Your father always said this house had life in it," she murmured. I never understood what he meant. Not then. I looked around, really looked, and for the first time, I felt it. The walls weren't empty. The silence wasn't hollow. Everything breathed in rhythm with us. Quiet sorrow, quiet love, quiet memory. Night pressed deeper into the windows. Outside, Maplewood drifted toward sleep. Inside, the golden glow from the lamps flickered against the shadows, stretching long across the floorboards like something unseen was moving with us. Watching. waiting. By morning, the world was washed gray. The scent of wet earth clung to the air, blending with the bittersweet aroma of Alis flowers blooming outside. I woke to the sight of my father's dark funeral suit draped over the chair beside my bed, sharp and final, like a reminder of the day everything changed. Clara was already awake. She stood in the kitchen with a cup of steaming coffee, staring out at the rain-soaked garden. There was a stillness in her that made the room feel sacred, like she was guarding something fragile inside herself. "I didn't sleep much," she said softly, not turning. "Neither did I." She took a slow sip and let the rising steam drift between us, warming the cold morning. "This house has its own rhythm," she murmured. "Sometimes it feels like it's breathing, doesn't it?" Her question hung in the air. I didn't know what to say, because for the first time in my life, I believed her.